Very interesting report today, Rams House, as the Los Angeles Rams are expected to attend Brendan Sorsby's July 10th Pro Day. On today's episode of the Rams Report presented by Prize Picks, we're going to talk about what this means and whether or not the Rams are likely to select Brendan Sorsby in the supplemental draft. I've seen a lot of conversation going around this ever since it kind of came out that the Rams are going to be there. So we're going to start to explain the whole situation a little bit more on today's show. But before we get into it, make sure you are up to date on all the latest around the LA Rams, guys. Every single day, we've got one or maybe even two. Today, some days, we got two videos coming out for you guys on the Los Angeles Rams. So don't miss a minute of Rams news and rumors and hit that subscribe button today and stay locked in. And also, hate to do double promo on you guys, but make sure you're locked in on Twitter as well, because that is where this news originally came from. We got the report from Pete Thamel today that every single NFL team is expected to be in attendance at Brendan Sorsby's Pro Day. He didn't tweet that out. He put it out in an article. He kind of buried it a little bit. I really have no idea why he didn't want to broadcast that out to more people. But of course, as soon as I heard that, I was like, well, all 32 teams encompasses the Los Angeles Rams. So that means the Rams are at Brendan Sorsby's Pro Day, or will be at Brendan Sorsby's Pro Day on July 10th, more accurately. So why is the question? And obviously it's surprising. But I don't think the why that might be immediately coming to your mind is the actual reason why the Rams plan to be there. Obviously, it's a bit of a surprise that the Rams are at Brendan Sorsby's Pro Day, but I'm not going to lie to you guys. I really don't think that the Rams are actually going to draft Brendan Sorsby. For a couple of reasons, and there's honestly like 15 reasons why the Rams probably aren't going to draft Brendan Sorsby, but the two biggest ones, if you had to get down to two big reasons, we'll get into them in just 1 second here. And I think there are two critical reasons. But obviously Sorsby is an interesting product on the field, just from a statistical perspective. If you just look at the numbers with him, he's been described as probably a first-round draft pick by a number of different scouts. We've heard that over the offseason. Tom Pelissero recently saying that before whether or not he was going to come out was finalized, a lot of teams considered him to be a first-round talent. A lot of teams considered him in that same neighborhood as maybe not a Fernando Mendoza, but like a Ty Simpson, our guy that ultimately went 13th overall. So, according to a number of scouts, that would have been his draft range in the 2026 NFL Draft. However, and we'll talk about this more in just a minute, a lot has come out about Sorsby that changes a lot of the equations around him. That it goes deeper than just the on the field. But I think there's two critical reasons why the Rams are not very likely to draft this guy. First is the super obvious. We have our quarterback. We've got our guy for the future in Ty Simpson. Ty Simpson is the Rams franchise QB. They drafted him in the first round of this year's draft with the 13th overall selection. I think at the end of the day, Ty Simpson will probably be, if anything, the only or sole biggest reason, not the only, but biggest reason why the Rams do not ultimately invest in Brendan Sorsby, because they already have their quarterback in Ty Simpson. I don't want them being out there, and we'll get into the reasons why they're out there, but it's really not a Ty Simpson thing at the end of the day. I really do not believe that they have already made any sort of conclusion around Ty Simpson. I've seen that conversation start already. Oh, I thought the Rams had their franchise quarterback of the future with Ty Simpson, but now they're going to Brendan Sorsby's Pro Day. They still have their franchise quarterback of the future. They still have their guy. There are a number of alternative reasons why they might go to Sorsby's Pro Day. And we're going to continue to talk about that and the other reason why I really don't think it's likely that they're going to draft him in just 1 second. But first, we've got to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, guys, and that is Prize Picks. Guys, Prize Picks is America's #1 sports picks app. And if you love daily fantasy sports or you just want to add more excitement to watching sports, you've got to try out Prize Picks. And if you never have, it is a great time to get started on Prize Picks with the World Cup underway right now. Guys, I've never been a huge soccer fan, but I've really been getting into the action. And honestly, the biggest reason why is because I've got some Prize Picks action going on, and it makes it so much more exciting. Even if it's a sport you're not really that into, if you've got a Prize Picks lineup going on it, it just adds a whole new level. And it's super easy to put them together. All you got to do is pick 2 to 6 players. You're selecting more or less on their stat projections, whether you're picking from goals, shots attempted, passes attempted, shots on target. They've got everything around the World Cup and all other sports. If the World Cup's not your thing, you guys could tail or fade me on today's lineup that I've got going. I'm going with the more on Cristiano Ronaldo's pass attempts, and I'm going with the more on goals and assists, half a goal and assist from Harry Kane. So you guys can tail, you can fade, whatever you do, just do it with our friends at Prize Picks. And if you're new to Prize Picks, make sure you use our promo code. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with Prize Picks. The clickable link to download the app is in the comments and the description below. All right, reason number 2. Why, if you're the Los Angeles Rams, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to come away with Brendan Sorsby. You got really limited draft capital in 2027 to begin with. The Rams have no first-round pick next year. The Rams have no third-round pick next year. The third rounder is thanks to the Trent McDuffie trade. It was a huge part of what we gave up to go get an all-pro corner. Mind you, I have no regrets about this trade. Absolutely zero. Everything we gave up in this was 100% worth it if Trent McDuffie is what we think he is and can be the lift that this secondary needed alongside Jalen Watson. And then, of course, in tandem with the other move, that is the reason we don't have a first-round pick in next year's draft. And, I mean, how could it not be your favorite move of this Rams offseason? The trade for Myles Garrett. Wish I was wearing my Flash shirt right now. I got my MVP Stafford shirt on right now. But Myles Garrett, of course, the reason why we do not have a first-round draft pick in next year's draft. So you're operating off of limited capital to begin with. The media expectation right now, the wide expectation is the third round. Feels like the likely landing zone for Brendan Sorsby. But I'm not going to lie to you guys. If you're asking me personally, where do I think Brendan Sorsby is going to fall in the 2026 NFL draft? I don't think it's going to be that early. I would not be surprised. And I'm going to tell you guys this, and you heard it here first, if it does actually happen. Don't be surprised if Brendan Sorsby is the equivalent of a day 3 pick in the supplemental draft. If he ends up sliding to the 5th, 6th, or 7th rounds. There are a number of things that complicate the situation with Brendan Sorsby. There are a number of things that NFL teams have to weigh that goes so far beyond the talent that Sorsby has on the field, that goes so far beyond what Sorsby could potentially bring to your NFL franchise. And I think the totality of that will ultimately make it very difficult for NFL teams to justify spending early round draft capital on him, especially when, and I know we do this every year, but look at the 2027 draft and what's expected to be available in the 2027 draft. We're talking about like Arch Manning, Dante Moore, Jeremiah Smith. These are unbelievable talents that could be available at the top of next year's draft. Who wants to give up a first-round pick and potentially lose your chance at picking somebody like that to take Brendan Sorsby, who comes with all of the baggage that he comes with? But I want to ask you guys a question here. Our Prize Picks question of the day. And we're going to get into a couple explanations for why this is on the back half of today's show. It's going to be the theme of the back half of today's show. But I want to hear your answers. Why are the Rams going to Brendan Sorsby's pro day? What, in your mind, is the reason why the Rams are attending Brendan Sorsby's pro day on July 10th? Obviously, every team in the NFL will be there. And we're going to talk about a couple possible explanations here. If you want to steal one of my answers, that's absolutely fine. Go right ahead and do so. But I want to hear from you. What do you think? Why are the Rams going to Brendan Sorsby's pro day? Let's jump into my 3 explanations. The 3 things that I have been able to kind of formulate, come up with that make sense to me. Number one, a long-term backup option. Could be possible here. And you look at Sorsby's talent, he definitely fits the bill of that, at least, in my opinion, at the NFL level. Like, again, you go back to the conversation around him before it was figured out that he was going to go to Texas Tech. He ends up being a $5 million transfer to Texas Tech, an enormous NIL addition to this Texas Tech team. But coming out of Cincinnati, the talent was evident. He tended to falter in the biggest moments, which to me, if I'm personally evaluating him, it's hard to make you a first-round draft pick, in my opinion, if you have a history of faltering in the biggest moments. But he definitely presented the kind of talent to be a long-term backup option. And again, if you're this Rams team, and you believe that the gambling addiction that Brendan Sorsby purportedly has and is still working through, something that he has self-admitted to at the end of the day, this was a major issue for him. He was struggling with gambling. He was struggling to control his ability to place bets. He was struggling to control that element of things. That is a chronic, lifelong issue for a lot of people. I'm not saying it's going to be the case for Brendan Sorsby. I'm not saying Brendan Sorsby cannot overcome this with dedication and treatment and work off the field. I absolutely hope that Brendan Sorsby can. Just man to man, I hope that that's the case for Brendan Sorsby. But if you're an NFL team evaluating this situation, you have to weigh that in, no? Like, how could you not weigh in the fact that this guy has a history of not only placing bets, which he knows he cannot do, but of placing bets on the team he is currently playing for? Maybe not suiting up for actively, maybe not playing actively in the game, but placing bets on the team he played for. That would be the end immediately for this guy's NFL career. You could get into legal trouble for that. This could go deeper than football. We've heard that there are potential investigations against him. He has pending lawsuits off the field. There is a lot that goes into this. And if you're the Rams, weighing all of these situations, and you just kind of realize nobody's going to spend early round draft capital on it. Nobody's going to do it. But we could spend a sixth. We could spend a seventh. If you think it's realistic that Brendan Sorsby slides, in the way I think it's realistic that Brendan Sorsby slides, and the Rams feel the same way, then maybe they look at this as, okay, we could bring in Brendan Sorsby to be the long-term backup here. Stetson Bennett's on the final year of his contract. Matthew Caldwell's an undrafted free agent who didn't ever start at the University of Texas. And we all know the timeline for Matthew Stafford is incredibly uncertain. You could enter next season with only one quarterback on the roster. That's not an unrealistic outcome right now. Absolutely. So bringing in another option could absolutely make sense. Even if Sorsby ends up being a practice squad body for most of this season, maybe he's the QB2 behind Ty Simpson next year or in 2028. You just don't know what next year is going to look like as far as this QB depth chart goes. Are you re-signing Stetson Bennett? Is Matthew Caldwell a long-term part of this team? Is he even going to make the final 53? I don't know. I genuinely don't believe so. So at the end of the day, you have three quarterbacks that are likely to be on this roster, two of which could potentially be off of it next season. Bringing in another option as a long-term backup certainly makes sense. It wouldn't go beyond the pale at all to spend a day 3 pick in next year's draft, even with limited capital already, on something that could fulfill that for you. But the next option, this is significantly more fun than discussing a long-term backup play. What about a draft and trade move? Could that be the explanation for why the Rams are out at Brendan Sorsby's pro day? What if they want to try to draft Brendan Sorsby, play him in the preseason, hype him up in training camp, and then flip him for better draft capital after he plays well in the preseason, presuming that he does, to a QB-needy team that initially didn't want to pull the trigger? Could you do it? I think it's possible. Again, this depends on a couple other factors. A, Sorsby needs to shine in the preseason. That's the number one thing that absolutely has to happen, or this whole plan falls apart. If Sorsby doesn't look good, then nobody's going to want to give up more than you already spent on him in the supplemental draft to trade for it, obviously. However, If Sorsby does look good and does slide, that's the other element of this. He almost has to slide to make this work because it's going to be hard to pull off a successful flip, even if he does play well, if you spent an aggressive amount of draft capital on him. And again, we've already discussed it's highly unlikely the Rams could afford to spend an aggressive amount of draft capital on him, given they don't have a first, given they don't have a third. And I just can't see the Rams taking themselves out of the first 2 days of the draft next year to add Brendan Sorsby to this roster. That would be ridiculous asset management, to be completely honest with you. But if they wanted to spend a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, or a seventh on Brendan Sorsby, they don't have a seventh, excuse me, a fourth, a fifth, or a sixth on Brendan Sorsby, and then he shines in the preseason, I don't think it's impossible you could flip Sorsby and something else for a second-round pick in next year's draft. If he looks incredible in the preseason, and then you have extra capital in next year's draft, flip him for a third in next year's draft. Whatever that ultimately looks like, I don't think this is something that should be ruled out entirely as the possibility for why the Rams, or at least some of the teams that are there at Brendan Sorsby, are there. Or at Brendan Sorsby's pro day, are there. I think this is the thought in the mind of at least a few of those teams. I can't tell you 100% that that's what the Rams are planning to do, but I definitely think it is a conversation that general managers are having right now is, could we pull this off? If he does slide, could we flip him for better capital? We're going to talk about one last explanation for why the Rams might be out at Brendan Sorsby's pro day. But before we do, guys, I've got some fun news. The CEO, the head honcho, James Yoder, sent us a message today, and he said, guys, I've got big news. We've got USA 250 merch. Guys, this stuff absolutely rocks. It is perfect with the World Cup going on right now. You can rock this going out to those watch parties. That's exactly what I plan to do. Can you show the America F Yeah tank top, Santino? Because this is the one that I am planning to get and rock. Yeah, there we go. America F Yeah, dude. I am going to wear this to my next World Cup watch party, to the next time I get to see America play internationally. You guys know I'm going to be repping this tank top. Who else? How could you be more patriotic than this right here? And what's really cool, if you want to get more than one piece of the merch collection, you actually get an automatic $10 off discount. Big ups to the CEO, James Yoder, for that little deal right there. Again, this is all available at chatsports.com/USA. While you're at the shop, make sure you check out our Rams Report collection if you haven't already picked up that merch, if you want to add to your Rams wardrobe before the season gets going as well. All right, cool. One last time, chatsports.com/USA if you want to pick up something for a USA watch party coming up. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of them. But let's get into the last explanation for why the Rams might be looking into Brendan Sorsby. Because the Rams are a smart, informed team that make informed decisions. I think it's as simple as this, right? It's called due diligence. Like that I think is, at the end of the day, the heart and soul of it. This is just due diligence. It's what every team in the NFL is trying to do right now around Brendan Sorsby, both from an on-the-field perspective and an off-the-field perspective. This is an incredibly complicated situation to manage and to weigh. It really is. Even standing here talking about it to you guys, it's a complicated thing at the end of the day. We don't get this type of situation a lot. I do unfortunately think it's going to be more and more common over the next couple of years. But it's something that for NFL teams, you've got to really take a long, hard look at. Because Sorsby undeniably has talent. There's no more valuable position on the football field than quarterback, than the guy who's going under center for you. So if you can get one that you truly think can be a franchise QB, even if you already have one, that's incredibly valuable, even if it's as a trade piece, So of course there's going to be interest from all 32 teams in at least feeling out this situation, kind of seeing what there might be to know about Brendan Sorsby. If what they find is going to scare them out of it, I truly think that might end up being the case for the vast majority of teams. I really think it's going to end up being the case for the Rams, especially given their draft capital situation and everything we've talked about today. But I understand why teams are looking into this. At the end of the day, you go back to the on-the-field talent, and Brendan Sorsby has it. Brendan Sorsby has the ability to play quarterback at the NFL level. I don't know if that's as a franchise QB, but he absolutely could be a solid backup for teams. I truly believe that. And so, of course, there's going to be interest in figuring out what there is to figure out with this situation. But again, I really think it's going to overwhelm teams when they open this kind of Pandora's box around Brendan Sorsby. I think the draft slide is going to be deeper than people expect it to be at the end of the day. And so that is going to bring us to our conclusion in today's video. I want to one more time kind of pose our prize picks question of the day to you guys. Why are the Rams going to Brendan Sorsby's pro day? If you want to steal one of the 3 explanations I gave to you, absolutely feel free to do it. But I want to hear some answers from you guys. I want to hear what the Ramley is thinking. How are we processing this information? Is it at all a worry to you? Do you not care? I want to know, how do we feel right now about the Brendan Sorsby news, about the idea that they're going out to the pro day, and just anything with the Rams. Earlier today, I asked you guys for your biggest Rams questions. We're going to do a mailbag later this week. So if you want to throw some more in the comments of today's video, absolutely feel free to do it. And make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next one. I'll see you then. As always, thanks for watching, and let's go Rams.